When it comes to Zaxby's Fingers, there's a few non-negotiables. It's gotta be only premium tenderloin, marinated for 12 hours and fried to crispy perfection. What is negotiable? The flavors you create mixing our 12 signature sauces. Woo, saucy! Zaxby's.
From Wall Street to the White House, this is the Larry Kudlow Show.
Welcome back, everybody. We're looking around for Tammy Bruce, but we have the great Joe Concha, Fox News contributor, and I gotta say it, author of the book, Come On Man, The Truth About Biden's No Good, Horrible, Very Bad Presidency.
Keep those royalty checks coming. Thank you.
There it is. So, Joe, I was watching you last night on Hannity or one of the Fox News shows, and I think you're right. Certainly one of the big headlines last night was Biden's refusal to take a detailed neurological cognitive test. I mean, he was adamant about that. He says he takes one every day. I don't know what he's talking about. He needs to take one. If he doesn't take one, this thing's going to get worse.
4 different occasions he would ask, would you take that cognitive or neurological test, Larry? And all 4 times he gave that weird answer of, well, I take one every day, which I guess he means he's battle tested every day, and that's actually the cognitive or neurological test. And then he finally conceded that, no, he won't actually take a formal one. So that's a big headline coming out of here. And also, just the lies he told during that interview with Stephanopoulos. Stephanopoulos is getting some praise for this interview, but didn't push back on any of these things, which there was this kind of subtle but noticeable underbelly to that whole interview, which is if Joe Biden didn't have memory problems or lack of mental acuity, then therefore this is actually a very successful presidency. He just can't articulate why it is. And it's like, no, that's not what's happening. There's a reason why he's at 36% approval. And yeah, you could say, well, because of what happened at the debate. No, he's been this low for some time because people still don't like the fact that cost of living is up 20% since this president took office. Gas prices are up 50% since this president took office. Crime is driving people out of major American cities like San Francisco, Chicago, New York to places like Florida, Tennessee, Texas in droves. And then obviously what happened at the border, immigration, 10 million people coming into this country illegally, including hundreds of terrorists. The record is the record. And foreign policy, I mean, let's not even talk about Afghanistan, Ukraine. You could go down the line as far as how weak we look in the world. So, yeah, Biden the man is a mess now at this point mentally. But really, the record isn't good, and that's because of policy. So in the end, when Biden said, for example, that Trump was screaming at him, yelling at him when Trump had his mic turned down, there was a split screen the entire time showing both men. You didn't see Trump do that once outside of when Biden claimed that he was a 6 in golf, which you got to defend, right? At that point, then you jump in. But that's the thing. That and what he's neutralized Putin, or he took Putin out, I believe is the exact. Everything about it was not good, and I think it did a lot worse than better. Here's one little more point that I want to make, and I'm borrowing it from Ari Fleischer because I saw it from him first, so attribution where it's due. He said Biden did just good enough, or I called it a D+, right? So we passed. It's not the type of grade you run home to mom and dad with on your report card, but all right, I guess he didn't fail completely. Therefore, he did enough to avoid an avalanche coming in if he had another debate night, except with this interview, where then he'd have to go. But at the same time, he did nothing in terms of reassuring people that he's okay. So he found that middle, and that's the worst case scenario for Democrats right now.
Well, he had a very low energy level. And, his voice wasn't as raspy as the debate, but it wasn't, maybe it's just a lack of energy, but it didn't sound like a healthy voice to me. But I wanted to just go back to your other point. I mentioned it in my opening. Biden blamed his poor debate performance in part on Donald Trump, who lied 26 times. I mean, that's just nonsense. I mean, Joe Biden has lied continuously how he inherited a bad economy. He didn't. How he inherited a 9% inflation. He didn't. How he inherited a huge debt burden, and how his debt burden is lower than Trump's. It's not true. You made the point about Putin. I still don't understand. What was Biden saying about Putin? Biden said don't with Ukraine, but Putin did?
Right.
I mean, did I miss something? Biden said he stopped the Chinese with Taiwan. Taiwan is now not only, strafing, China's strafing Taiwan and the Philippines now. It's getting worse over there. Not better. This stuff I just didn't understand. And you're right, George Stephanopoulos should have followed through on some of those things.
And he did not. And ABC News, by the way, if the whole premise of the interview is that, well, Biden does worse as the day goes on, right? We saw that one report from Axios that says that basically he's only mentally there from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Then Biden himself admitted to governors that he probably shouldn't do any events past 8 p.m. anymore, which, you know, if there's a second debate between Biden and Trump, what are you going to do? You're going to move that to like 1:05 Eastern time, like Yankees first pitch? Like, how are we going to do that? Right? But fine, I guess I'll do that at night. But ABC should have said, yeah, we'll do this interview, but it's going to be live at 8 o'clock. We're not doing a pre-tape. And they agreed to the pre-tape, and they agreed to the condition also that Biden's people said, we only want this thing around 20 minutes. Why? Oh, we know why, because he doesn't have the stamina, to your point, energy to go much further than that. But that felt like the longest 22 minutes of my life watching that, because it just was so painful to know that this guy isn't my golf starter at my local golf club. This is the guy who's currently the commander-in-chief of our armed forces, and he did nothing to inspire any confidence. And again, Larry, I can't make this point enough. Donald Trump's utter discipline here, and the fact that he's just being so smart, listening to the people closest to him that say, let this play out. And now it's been 9 days, and Trump publicly has not said anything. I think one tape leaked, but I don't know if he knew that that was being recorded when he was talking about it. But otherwise, you know, you don't see him running to microphones and interviews and talking about how horrible Biden was and just stepping on the story, because, you know, journalists want to now equate Trump with Biden as far as like mental acuity, which is utterly ridiculous given Trump's energy and cognitive abilities. So, yeah, Trump has been so disciplined here, and it's paying off for him big time. I think Democrats can't wait for the Republican National Convention to begin quite soon enough in 9 days, because at least finally takes this story off of every A block and every front page.
What's the line? If your enemy's hanging himself, let him go ahead and do it, or something like that?
Yeah,
that's
or
what
something
Trump
with
is doing.
Quicksand, right? Don't send them a lifeline. They're going to sink on their own, so don't bother even jumping in. So, yeah, that's good stuff. And I think that's Trump's top campaign people this time around, who really are running like an A-plus campaign to this point and expanding the map, quite frankly, right? We see the polls, Maine, New Hampshire, New Mexico, New Jersey, Virginia, Minnesota. Now Biden, who barely can get to like one campaign event a week, it seems. Like after the debate, you didn't see him for like 4 days, right? Because he was prepping for this interview, I suppose. And now he's going to be having a press conference next Thursday. Why does he need 6 days to prep for a prep conference? Why not just have it tomorrow? Or better yet, debate Trump next week, as Trump has offered. And he's not going to do that. That we know.
When is that going to be, Joe?
The press conference?
Yeah.
Next Thursday.
Thursday, and what time of day is that going to be?
I'll bet I'll have to look it up just to make sure, but it's not going to be a primetime press conference, because that's, you know, primetime, and that's not a good time.
1 in the afternoon. Nobody's going to see it.
Exactly. Bill's kickoff. That's what we're going to have, the 1 p.m. start. I keep using that sports analogy, but that's the only thing that comes to mind.
What was this thing he said? The New York Times had him down 10 points before the debate? No, they didn't.
They didn't.
I checked that. They had him down 3 on likely voters, 6 on registered voters. After the debate, he's down 6 on likely voters and 9 on registered voters. But there was another one. I mean, and he couldn't remember the Wall Street Journal poll one, so Stephanopoulos kind of bailed him out on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, these are all. I don't know. Are Democrats going to basically demand a clear-cut, comprehensive cognitive test? Do you think that's going to be a rallying cry?
It may, but he may not take it anyway. I mean, he was just so defiant last night and not accepting basic reality that you are losing to Donald Trump right now. And if we just look at it from an electoral perspective, you're losing badly. And Stephanopoulos had the numbers, 36% approval. And then when Biden says, well, that's not the polls I'm seeing. Well, what polls are you seeing exactly? Because there was one that was leaked just a couple days after the debate from literally a Democratic polling firm that Biden's team turns to the most. And that was the most horrifying, because it showed that now even Colorado is in play as far as states. And all the other ones that I mentioned, double-digit leads for Trump in North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada. So, yeah, that's the thing. He's either not being told the reality of what's going on around him in terms of his reelection prospects and people's perception of him. And maybe that's because the only people that are really talking to him that he's listening to is Jill Biden, who wants to hang on to power for as long as she possibly can and doesn't care about her husband's well-being in any way, shape, or form, or else she would have never let him run 4 years ago, let alone tell him to keep running now. And Hunter Biden, who obviously has his own motivations as far as his father being in power and all the profiting that he made off of that, and the fact that he could still go to jail. scale, especially if Trump's president. But I think Trump will be smart. If Trump wins, there's not going to be any retribution against the Bidens or anything like that, because he didn't do it with Hillary. I don't believe he'll do it here. But yet that's what the left will tell you, that it's all going to be a revenge tour for Donald Trump. Trump's been smart. He says, success will be my revenge. It's a great line.
Trump, he already addressed that. That's exactly right. In fact, he addressed it during the debate. But he's addressed it since then and before then. Right. Success is the best revenge. Success is the unifier. But what do you make now? The media is turned against Biden. I mean, they're a little late to the party, but the media also, I think, is turning against Biden because of their pathological dislike of Trump. I mean, I think that's what's behind this. And that Biden can't win. Oh, my God, Trump is coming. Trump is coming.
It's a means to an end, right? Like, as long as someone can defeat Trump, whether it's, all right, they don't believe it's going to be Joe Biden, nor should they. And then they think, okay, well, Kamala Harris may have a slightly better chance than Biden, only because I know that her mental acuity is fine, but there's something broken in that brain if you just listen to her speak outside of a teleprompter. Like that, I'm not saying that she's gone mental, but she doesn't have the ability to articulate basic thoughts for whatever reason. That's why you barely see her. And quite frankly, Larry, America barely knows who Kamala Harris is, right? Because she doesn't do many interviews. The top item on her LinkedIn page is border czar. That ain't good, right? And people forget, and when she ran for president in 2020, she was considered a top front runner and didn't even get to Iowa because Democratic voters found her so unlikable and really saw the authenticity problems that she has. And I have no idea where she stands in terms of her moral compass on all the policies that we just talked about before. So I don't think that's much of an upgrade, but they figure, well, if we could just get anybody else in there, Michelle Obama, Hillary Clinton, Gavin Newsom, Gretchen Whitmer, then Trump will be defeated. But I still say, Larry, and I know you got to get the break, so I'll get out. The Democratic brand is broken. That's the whole problem. These are the people who said, hey, we could lower inflation. That's at 9% by passing something called the Inflation Reduction Act, which spends hundreds of billions of dollars. That'll bring it down. And of course it didn't. District attorneys not enforcing the law in major American cities. That's a Democratic thing right now. Illegal immigration and paying for all these people to be here while we strip social services in major American cities. That's a Democratic thing. Party of war, Ukraine. That's a Democratic thing. So I don't care who you put in there. And quite frankly, Kamala Harris is the only person that I see going into that slot if Biden does step aside, because that's where the money is. It's non-transferable, and you're not going to start from zero with somebody else with no name recognition like Gretchen Whitmer.
I want to pursue this and what happens next and whether there's an open convention. Let's take a quick break, folks. We're talking to Joe Concha, Fox News contributor. I'm Kudlow. We'll be right back after this quick word.
Larry Kudlow. From Wall Street to the White House, this is the Larry Kudlow Show.
Welcome back, folks. We're talking to Joe Concha, Fox News contributor. Joe, couple things left here. First of all, this Mark Warner delegation, I don't know if you know anything about this.
Yeah.
It was a Washington Post story. I know Mark Warner reasonably well. He's a fairly moderate Democrat trying to organize a group senators, I guess, to go visit Biden and tell him to drop out or try to persuade him to drop out. What do you make of that?
Well, let's first discuss what Joe Biden made of it. So Stephanopoulos brought this up to Biden. It seemed like it was the first time he had heard about it. In other words, again, what are his aides telling him and not telling him? And then he again lied and said that Mark Warner actually ran against him in 2020 and didn't get the nomination.
Which he didn't.
No, he did not. And it wasn't like he was in early on, he dropped out. No, he didn't run, period.
No.
So that was a weird excuse. But to your point, Mark Warner isn't some loose cannon, right? This guy is considered like an old school kind of Democrat, right? Where you don't look at him and he's not embracing all the woke stuff, and he just seems to be a reasonable person and has been in the Senate for some time for that reason. So when he starts to lead this delegation, behind the scenes, trying to get senators together, which pull a lot more weight, obviously, than Congress people, because there's only 100 of those, and I think, 538 as far as the Congress is concerned. If he can get enough prominent senators to say, it's time to go, Joe. We need to win, and for good of country, you need to do this. I think it really could pull some weight, but I think in the end, the only two people that could tell Biden that he has to step aside is Jill Biden and, all right, this isn't a person, it's more of a deity, and God himself. Like, that's what he said. If God came down and told me, then maybe. So God's probably not doing that. And if you're the Trump camp, you absolutely just want this to keep going and going for as long as possible. But either way, you get Biden or you get Kamala, you're going to win the presidency.
By the way, the quote, producer Christian, never interrupt your enemy while he's making a mistake. It's bad manners.
Napoleon,
that was
right?
Napoleon. But there's a paraphrase, never interfere never interfere with an enemy while he's in the process of destroying himself. That was the other. That's the paraphrase of Napoleon, but I don't know who said what to whom. Joe, you must have said both of those things. There's no question about that. Now, here's the thing. What happens here? If Joe Biden were, for some reason, to pull out, what happens? You go to an open convention? I mean, he's not pulling out as president. He's pulling out as the presumptive nominee, which means the Democrats need a nominee, which means they have to go to the convention, probably change some rules and have an open convention. Is that what happens?
I get it's so unprecedented. I mean, I guess we really don't have much of a playbook on this one now, do we? Look, what could happen is maybe, and this was my argument I made on Outnumbered yesterday with Kaylee, for example. And that is, why is it okay for Biden to step aside as the Democratic nominee, but still gets to be president for the next 200 days? Like, well, he should resign. I mean, that's pretty obvious now. That we're probably not going to get to that point. Maybe let him finish his term with dignity, type of thing, I suppose. But it's a national security risk at this point. I mean, let's face it. But to your point, I would think that if he steps aside, then it does go to an open convention. It's not like he dies or is incapacitated that Kamala then assumes the office. I think it's anybody's ballgame at that point. But Kamala is going to have the most support around her. Only because, again, that war chest with hundreds of millions of dollars, only she can access that. That can't go to anybody else. So that argument alone, and the fact that she's going to say that black voters are already turning on you in big droves. New York Times had Donald Trump, it's 26% support. That's like 3 times what a Republican normally gets. She's going to threaten that, look, black voters are not going to go along with this. She certainly isn't going to go along with that. She's going to fight dirty because she believes that, almost like Hillary Clinton, that this is her job now. It's a coronation. That's going to be an absolute mess. And then think about, it's in Chicago, right? And those protests and riots over the war in Gaza, I mean, it's going to be a complete, and I can't use the word, but the last part of it is show.
I want 100 ballots. There was I think it was a Democratic convention.
68?
Well, no, I'm thinking of 1920 or 1924. My history is a little shaky here. I wasn't quite born yet. But the Democrats, it went on forever and ever. And then they lost to Harding and Coolidge anyway. But I can't remember. I have to look that up. Maybe producer Christian can look that up while we're having this conversation. But the last open convention that I remember was 1976, where Reagan versus Gerald Ford. And Ford won. But they actually had I think it was one ballot. But it was close, very close, as a matter of fact.
Didn't Kennedy and Carter also have kind of an open convention? Because that came down to floor votes, right? And because Kennedy seemed to have a shot.
Ted Kennedy, you know what? There probably was. He had a lot of delegates. That's true. I'm not sure that one was ever in doubt. 1968, Nixon won easily. I mean, Reagan was there, Rockefeller, but nothing heavy. Then, of course, the Democrats' fiasco of 72 with George McGovern and Eagleton, but that was for the vice presidential thing, not for the presidential. I think 76 was the last time, but maybe some viewers...
Long time ago, regardless.
But, I mean, I would welcome an open convention. I think it would be the most fun in the world. You think they're just going to give it to Kamala? Gavin Newsom? Gretchen Whitmer, all these, just going to give it to Kamala?
Money. She's got, I mean, that's the overriding, I think, argument. I don't think she's the best candidate. If I were to pick any of them, boy, this ain't the 98 Yankees. Let's see. You got Gavin Newsom, Gretchen Whitmer, Hillary Clinton, maybe. I don't think Michelle Obama is a factor. I don't think she wants this. So let's say it's like those three. I guess it's Whitmer because we know her the least. Right, and she's young, she's attractive, relatively young, Gavin Newsom would not connect well at all with voters in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan. Like auto workers, Gavin Newsom in a hard hat, no, it just doesn't fly.
Right.
Gel and hairspray only gets you so far, my friend.
Yeah, he wouldn't he wouldn't put a cap on. He has that lovely hair. I know Gavin
It is nice.
very well. I knew Gavin when he was a moderate Democrat mayor of San Francisco.
Wow.
How things have changed. Joe Concha, you're fabulous. Thanks ever so much,
Larry.
folks. Writing a new book, everyone. We're going to take a break. On the other side, Dr. Arthur Laffer, we're going to talk about why Donald Trump's first year in office would have been the best first year of any president in our history, and the jobs report, which was pretty poor and mediocre. I'm Kudlow. Please stick around.
This is Greg Kelly for Priority Gold. What does it mean to be America's precious metals dealer? It means that you're in touch with the hearts and minds of those who love this country, value our freedom, and want to protect the future. Priority Gold is that precious metals dealer. They've helped thousands of Americans back their retirement with solid gold and silver. Call Priority Gold at 888-506-6439. Receive free shipping, free storage, a free investment guide, and one of the best purchase experiences in the industry. Call now or go to PriorityGold.com.